A fateful decision. In the vast reaches of the Orion Arm, the Galactic Council convened for its centennial meeting. Representatives from 100 spacefaring civilizations gathered to discuss matters of diplomacy, trade, and the ever-expanding frontier of known space. Order, order, called out Zorik, the Archean High Chancellor and current head of the Council. His tentacles writhed with impatience as the assembled delegates settled into their seats. We have a packed agenda today, so let's get started. First up, a report from the Contact Committee regarding a newly discovered species. Councillor Mactol, please proceed. A tall, slender being with iridescent green skin stepped forward. Thank you, Chancellor. As you know, our scout ships recently established first contact with a species known as humans from a planet called Earth. Initial assessments suggest a technologically advanced civilization on the cusp of interstellar travel. Mactol's report outlined key aspects of human society and culture. Many counselors listened with interest, but some appeared distracted, skimming through the information packets on their datapads. While humans have a complex history, Mactol continued, we believe they are ready to join the galactic community. Their technology and scientific understanding are impressive for a species so young. Zorik raised a tentacle. And what of their social and political structures? Have they achieved sufficient stability and unity to engage with council races? Mactol hesitated. Their history is complicated. Like many species, they have a past marked by conflict and war. However, they have made significant strides in recent centuries towards peace and cooperation. We believe they pose no significant threat to galactic stability. A murmur rippled through the chamber. Chancellor Zorik called for a vote. All in favor of granting humans provisional council membership and non-threatening species status. A sea of appendages rose in assent. The motion carried with no opposition. As the council moved on to other business, none could have predicted how that one decision would shape the future of the galaxy. They had failed to grasp the depths of human history, the scars left by 1,000 wars, and the unyielding spirit that had propelled humanity to the stars. The Galactic Council, in its wisdom, had sown the seeds of its own downfall. Trouble brewing. Ambassador Diana Saunders stood at the viewport of her quarters, gazing pensively at the swirling blues and greens of the planet below. Tolera was a garden world, renowned for its beauty, and the site of the current council summit. But Saunders had little time to appreciate the view. Her thoughts were consumed by the troubling reports trickling in from the edges of human space. Minor skirmishes, the reports call them. Isolated incidents on remote colony worlds and outposts. Nothing to worry the council, but Saunders knew better. She had seen the signs before, the small sparks that could quickly ignite into a raging inferno. A chime at the door interrupted her musings. Enter, she called out. The door slid open to reveal a familiar figure, Admiral Lars Jansen, commander of the human delegation's security detail. Ambassador, he greeted with a crisp salute. I have an update on the situation in the Tycho system. Saunders motioned for him to continue, steeling herself for more bad news. Our intelligence suggests the Krellin Empire was behind the attack on our mining outpost. Jansen reported grimly. We're still piecing together the details, but it looks like they were after the dysprosium deposits. Saunders frowned. The Krellins were a minor power, but one with a reputation for ruthless expansionism. If they were willing to attack a human colony, it meant they no longer feared reprisal from the Council. Have you brought this to the attention of Council security? She asked. Jansen nodded. I have, but I'm not sure they grasp the full implications. They seem to think it's just another border dispute, nothing that can't be resolved through normal diplomatic channels. Saunders sighed. The Council races had grown complacent in their centuries of peace, forgetting the harsh realities that had shaped the galaxy before the advent of the hyperdrive. They looked upon humanity's tumultuous past as a curiosity, a relic of a primitive age long since past. We need to make them understand, she said at last. The Krellins are testing us, probing for weaknesses. If we don't respond decisively, others will follow suit. Jansen's jaw tightened. I agree, Ambassador. But how do we convince the Council to take action? They still see us as the new kids on the block, too green to be taken seriously. A wry smile tugged at Saunders' lips. Then perhaps it's time we reminded them why we're here. Set up a meeting with the Krellin ambassador. It's time for some good old-fashioned human diplomacy. As Jansen departed to make the arrangements, Saunders turned back to the viewport. The peaceful vista seemed to mock her, a thin veneer hiding the ugly truths lurking beneath the surface. The shadows of war were gathering, and humanity would once again be called upon to light the way. All-out war. The war began as wars often do, with a single shot fired in anger, a tragic misunderstanding that spiraled out of control. When the dust settled, a human diplomat lay dead on the floor of the Krellin embassy, and the fragile peace that had held the galaxy together for centuries shattered like glass. To the Galactic Council, it was a nightmare scenario. For centuries, they had maintained order through careful diplomacy and the threat of sanctions, avoiding the messy realities of armed conflict. But now, with one of their newest members clamoring for blood, they found themselves woefully unprepared for the crisis at hand. Ambassador Saunders stood before the council, her voice trembling with barely contained rage. The Krellin Empire has committed an act of war against the United Earth Federation. We demand that the council take immediate action to bring the perpetrators to justice and ensure the safety of our citizens. Chancellor Zorik, his tentacles writhing in agitation, tried to calm the situation. Ambassador, please, we must not let our emotions cloud our judgment. Surely there is a peaceful resolution to be found. Saunders' eyes flashed with anger. With all due respect, Chancellor, the time for talk has passed. The Krellins have made their intentions clear. They see us as weak, as easy prey. If we do not respond with force, we invite further aggression. The chamber erupted in a cacophony of voices, some calling for restraint, others demanding action. In the end, the council could reach no consensus. Paralyzed by indecision, they watched helplessly as the human fleet mobilized for war. The Krellins, for their part, remained defiant. They claimed the diplomat's death was an accident, a tragic case of mistaken identity. But the evidence was damning, and the humans were in no mood for excuses. As human warships poured into Krellin space, the galaxy held its breath. Many expected a swift and brutal campaign, a display of human military might that would quickly bring the Krellins to heel. But they had underestimated the depths of Krellin resolve and the cunning of their battle-hardened commanders. The war dragged on for months, then years. The humans, for all their technological prowess, found themselves bogged down in a brutal ground war on a dozen worlds. The Krellins, masters of asymmetric warfare, struck at human supply lines and communications, bleeding them dry with 1,000 cuts. And all the while, the council dithered and debated, unable or unwilling to intervene. Some secretly hoped the humans would exhaust themselves against the Krellins, leaving the galaxy to return to its comfortable status quo. Others feared the growing power of the human war machine and the unpredictable nature of its leaders. But as the conflict entered its third year, a new threat emerged. A shadowy extremist faction, hidden within the ranks of the Krellin military, had seized control of a cache of ancient weapons of unimaginable power. With these so-called doomsday devices at their disposal, they threatened to bring the galaxy to its knees. Suddenly, the petty squabbles of the past seemed trivial in comparison. The humans and Krellins, once bitter enemies, found themselves with a common foe. And the council, at long last, realized the true stakes of the conflict they had so long ignored. The stage was set for a final confrontation, one that would determine the fate of the galaxy for generations to come. And at the center of it all, a single human diplomat, determined to forge a new path through the chaos and lead her people to victory, no matter the cost. Turning the tide. Ambassador Diana Saunders strode through the halls of the Galactic Council, her footsteps echoing in the hushed silence. The once bustling corridors were nearly deserted, with only a handful of aides and security personnel scurrying about their duties. The war had taken its toll on the Council, both in lives lost and in the erosion of its credibility. But Saunders had no time to dwell on the past. The future of the galaxy hung in the balance, and she was determined to see humanity take its rightful place among the stars. She entered the council chambers, taking her seat among the other delegates. The mood was tense, with nervous whispers and furtive glances exchanged between the various factions. Chancellor Zorek, his tentacles drooping with exhaustion, called the meeting to order. "Esteemed colleagues," he began, his voice strained, "we stand at a crossroads. The extremist faction within the Krellan Empire threatens to unleash unimaginable destruction upon us all. We must put aside our differences and work together to stop them." Saunders rose to speak. "Chancellor, I couldn't agree more. The human fleet stands ready to assist in any way possible, but we cannot do this alone. We need the support of the Council and of all the races represented here today." There was a murmur of agreement from the assembled delegates. Even the Krellans, once humanity's bitterest foes, seemed willing to cooperate in the face of this new threat. Over the next several days, Saunders worked tirelessly to forge a coalition. She met with leaders from a dozen worlds, hammering out the details of a joint military campaign. She called in favors, leveraged old alliances, and used every ounce of her diplomatic skill to bring the disparate factions together. At the same time, human scientists and engineers worked around the clock to develop new weapons and defenses. The doomsday devices wielded by the extremists were like nothing the galaxy had ever seen, and countering them would require every bit of human ingenuity and resourcefulness. Finally, after weeks of intense negotiations and preparations, the coalition was ready to strike. A massive fleet, comprised of ships from a dozen races, set out for the Krellan frontier. At its head was the human flagship, the UES Titan, with Saunders and Admiral Jansen at the helm. The battle that followed was like nothing the galaxy had ever seen. The extremists, dug in on a heavily fortified world, fought with the fury of fanatics. Their doomsday devices carved great swaths of destruction through the coalition fleet, vaporizing ships and crews with each devastating blast. But the humans and their allies fought back with equal determination. They deployed new weapons of their own, developed in secret by human scientists. Graviton bombs that ripped apart the fabric of space-time, nanite swarms that devoured enemy ships from the inside out, and the piece de resistance, a massive energy shield that absorbed the doomsday device's blasts and channeled them back at the extremists' own forces. In the end, it was the shield that turned the tide. The extremists, their own weapons turned against them, were forced to retreat. The coalition fleet pressed its advantage, driving them back to their stronghold, and finally, after a brutal ground assault, capturing the last of the doomsday devices. The war was over. The extremists were defeated, and the Krellan Empire was in ruins. But the cost had been high. Thousands of ships and millions of lives had been lost. The Galactic Council, once the guardian of peace and stability, was a shadow of its former self. But as Saunders stood on the bridge of the Titan, gazing out at the stars, she knew that this was only the beginning. Humanity had proven itself, not just as a military power, but as a force for good in the galaxy. And with the Council weakened, it would fall to Earth to take up the mantle of leadership and guide the galaxy into a new era of peace and prosperity. The future was uncertain, but one thing was clear. The galaxy would never be the same again. A new era. In the aftermath of the war, the galaxy was a changed place. The old order, dominated by the Galactic Council and its rigid hierarchies, had been swept away. In its place, a new paradigm was emerging, one in which humanity played a leading role. At the forefront of this new era was Ambassador Diana Saunders. With the Council in disarray, she had stepped into the breach, using her diplomatic skills and her deep understanding of galactic politics to help forge a new path forward. Her first order of business was to convene a summit of the major spacefaring races. The goal was to establish a new framework for galactic cooperation, one that would prevent the kind of conflict that had nearly torn the galaxy apart. The summit was a tense affair, with old rivalries and grudges bubbling to the surface. But Saunders was a master negotiator, and she worked tirelessly to find common ground. She appeals to the delegates' sense of shared destiny, reminding them of the horrors of the war and the need to build a better future for all. Slowly but surely, progress was made. The delegates hammered out the details of a new galactic charter, one that enshrined the principles of peace, cooperation, and mutual respect. They established new institutions, including a reformed Galactic Council that gave equal voice to all races, and a galactic peacekeeping force that would help maintain stability and security. But perhaps the most significant outcome of the summit was the formal recognition of humanity as a full and equal member of the galactic community. No longer would Earth be seen as a newcomer or a second-class citizen. Humanity had earned its place among the stars, and the other races would now treat it with the respect and deference it deserved. As the summit drew to a close, Saunders took a moment to reflect on all that had happened. She thought back to those early days when humanity had first ventured out into the galaxy, full of hope and wonder. She remembered the challenges they had faced, the obstacles they had overcome, and the sacrifices they had made. And she thought about the future, about the role that humanity would play in shaping the destiny of the galaxy. It was a daunting prospect, but one that filled her with excitement and purpose. As she stepped out onto the stage to address the assembled delegates one final time, Saunders felt a sense of pride and accomplishment wash over her. She had helped guide humanity through its darkest hour, and now she would lead it into a new era of peace and prosperity. "My fellow citizens of the galaxy," she began, her voice ringing out clear and strong. "Today marks a new beginning. A beginning of hope, of unity, and of shared purpose. Together, we have faced the darkness and emerged stronger, wiser, and more united than ever before. But our journey is far from over. The road ahead will be long and difficult, and there will be many challenges to overcome. But I have faith in the strength and resilience of the galactic community. I have faith in our ability to rise above our differences and work together for the common good. And I have faith in the future, a future in which all races, all beings, can live in peace and harmony. A future in which the galaxy is not a place of conflict and strife, but a place of wonder and discovery, of endless possibilities and untold potential. So let us go forth from this place, united in our resolve and our purpose. Let us build a better galaxy, one step at a time. And let us never forget the lessons of the past, the sacrifices of the present, and the promise of the future. Thank you, and may the stars guide us all." As the applause washed over her, Diana Saunders felt a sense of hope and optimism that she had not felt in years. The road ahead would be long and difficult, but she knew that humanity and the galaxy would rise to the challenge. A new era had begun, and the future was bright.